Hello everyone, I'm Ákos Birmaher from Bitrise. I'm happy to be here and have the opportunity to discuss with you how can you reduce the risk of your app releases and show you LaunchDarkly's new integration with Bitrise. I wanted to mention if you have any question, feel free to ask it in the Q&A panel. So before we start, I would like to say some word about myself. I joined Bitrise 5 years ago after some years of app development, and during that time I was a bit fed up with app development, but did not really want to go away from the whole mobile space. So I decided to stop developing mobile applications and set a new goal for me. I wanted to help mobile developers and creating useful tools for them. So after I joined Bitrise, I started as a tooling engineer, working on integrations called steps, mostly focusing on iOS side and code signing. After some years, I switched to product management, and now I'm part of a team focusing on app deployment and working on release management. Today, I still have the same goal. I want to help mobile developers by creating useful tools for them. And this is why I was so excited to have the opportunity to work together with LaunchDarkly and make app and feature releases a bit more transparent and hopefully a bit more easier to use. Okay, let's start and see what we're going to talk about today. Today, we will start by exploring the mobile landscape. Then we will discuss some problems with the mobile app releases and see why they make it more risky to release to production, and see if there is a way to minimize these risks. And finally, we will close it today by checking how LaunchDarkly's new integration with Bitrise Release Management can help you and your team to easily overview your app and feature releases in one centralized place. So mobile is growing rapidly, and I think just the experience of using mobile is just better every year. Personally, I'm using my mobile more and more, and I started to prefer using my mobile over my laptop. Of course, there are still cases when I prefer to sit down at my desk and use my laptop, but this happens less and less. And I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one, as this increase of mobile usage is clearly visible in the data as well. Just in 2022, 255 billion new app downloads happened. This means that in 2022, every minute, almost 500,000 applications were downloaded. And of course, we are not just downloading applications, we are using these applications as well. An average user using 5 hours a day their mobile. To be honest, for me, when I first heard this number, I thought that this is a bit too much. But after I checked my screen time, I quickly realized that I'm using my phone between 3 and 4 hours. So I'm using my phone even more than I first thought. Basically, I'm using my phone every day for almost every small things to do. I'm using my phone for a GPS in my car and even listening to music on Spotify because I just don't like the radio stations here in Hungary. But I'm using my phone to chat with my friends, to check the Slack messages with my team, or just read the news. And yes, nowadays I started to use my phone to watch YouTube videos. I don't watch YouTube videos on my laptop anymore. The small screen is perfectly fine. For watching movies, it's still too small, but for YouTube videos, it's just fine. So what I wanted to say with this, that mobile became part of our daily life. And of course, most companies realize this. And they don't really want to be left out. Each year, new companies join the market, and by that, they're generating more and more competition for the applications already available in the store. The problem with this is that it's not enough anymore just to solve a user problem with your application. Probably other applications in the App Store is solving the same user problem for the same user segment. It's not enough to be the first anymore. To make sure that the users are choosing your application and not choosing the competitor's application, your application has to stand out somehow. And the easiest way to do that is making sure that your application has a good ranking in the App Store. You can achieve that by making sure that your application, and by that your users, receive frequent updates, new features, bug fixes, and optimizations, of course. So the answer is easy, right? Just increase the frequency, let's say release every 2 or 1 week, and we are good to go. Well, yes, this is the goal, but I think it's not so easy to achieve. Let's talk about the problems with app releases and why they make it more risky to release to production. The first problem I want to talk about is the slow adoption of new releases. Most of the times it's not a problem, but when you have a bug in production affecting more users, let's say all of the users, you probably want to push a hotfix and make it available for the users with the fix as soon as possible. But it can take 5 to 6 weeks, first of all, to detect the issue, start implementing the fix for the issue, testing the new release, because of course we don't want to release a new bug into production by mistake, ship out to production, and only after that wait for the majority of users to update their application. Even if we rush with the hotfix and we already have the idea how to solve the problem and we are not testing and just push it out to production just to make sure that our users receive the fix as soon as possible, you still need to wait for the users to update their application. So isn't there a way to force our users to update their application? Yes, it's possible, but believe me, it's not a good user experience. I even changed banks because of this. So my previous bank used this logic, I don't know why, but from time to time, when you try to log in into your account in the mobile app, you got this little message saying that this version of the application is not supported anymore. You should update your application. And you were logged out from your account until you updated your application. Of course, this most of the times happened when I had no Wi-Fi connection, only mobile data. The last straw was is when I was in DroidCon Berlin, a conference, which was pretty good. I enjoyed it. There was awesome presentation. I met some really interesting people, and yes, well, I lost my credit card. So when you lost your credit card in a foreign country, you want to cancel it as soon as possible. And this was true for me as well, especially that all of my money for that week was on that card. So I grabbed my phone, opened the application and tried to log in, and of course I got this message. Your application is not supported anymore. I mean this version, you should update your application. So finally I was able to cancel my credit card by calling the bank, and they were happy to help me. But I was not so happy. So after I came back to Budapest, I started to look for new banks. And a week later, I switched bank. So what I wanted to say with this, that even if you can force your users to update their application so they will have the fix for the bug, probably it's not a good idea. So what else can we do? Instead of focusing on fixing the bug, which is already in production, and rushing with the hotfix and updating and forcing the users to update their application, why not focusing on the quality of the release? Mobile teams started to shift left, and by that aim to detect issues as early as possible, preferably in the pre-production, and by that minimize the risk of releasing bugs into production. So let's talk about as a solution to not to shorten down the slow adoption, but to avoid to depend on hotfixes and forcing our users to update their application. So to understand shift left, think about the mobile developer cycle as an infinity loop from left to right. On the left side, mobile developers are planning, implementing, and testing their application in pre-production. While on the right side, mobile teams are releasing their application into production, and by that making it available for the users. Shift left is a practice of moving testing, quality, performance, and security evaluation to the left side, early to the development process. The goal is to move away from ship it fast, then we will fix it later with hotfix in the production, to ship it fast, but only ship well-tested quality releases. The three main points of shift left is making sure you are testing early, have a way to detect issues, and you are using stage releases. So by testing early, you can make sure that the developers find the issues in pre-production, making it a lot easier to fix it and of course cheaper. And not to mention that because it's in pre-production and not in production, users will not be affected. But even if you test everything and try to catch all of the bugs, bugs will be still published in production. So what you want to do is try to detect these issues as soon as possible. It's not a good idea to wait for users to report that, by the way, the login page of your application is not working. Because keep in mind, when the first user reports an issue, probably 40, 50 other users already met the problem, but they just didn't spend time on reporting it. By detecting the issue early as possible, hopefully when the first user met it, you can shorten down the slow adoption time by starting the fix earlier. And the last thing is, next to testing early and detecting issues, is making sure that you are using stage releases. Apple and Google making it possible to specify a small percentage of users as early adopters. Apple calls it phase releases, while Google calls it stage releases. There are some minimal differences between the two, but they are mostly for the same. So by making sure that you are testing early, preferably in the early part of the development process, and have a way to detect issues, and using stage releases to minimize the impact of any bad release, you can avoid to depend on hotfixes and forcing your users to update your application. But even with all of this, after a bug is released to production, you can't take it back. Rolling back a mobile application from production is just not possible. So let's talk about the next problem. No rollback for mobile teams. For website, rolling back a faulty release is pretty easy. We even have a physical button at Bitrise for just pushing it, and we can roll back the website to the previous version. The story behind it is that we are doing a hackathon every half year, and one of the team years ago, as a joke, created this button. So we have this physical button, click it, roll back. Of course, we are not having it connected to the production anymore, just to be sure. But you can see it's really easy to start an automation and roll back to the previous version for website. For mobile, this is not possible because you are dependent on Apple and Google. But even for mobile, there is something what you can use, not to roll back a whole app version, but to turn off and roll back specific features and code changes. So what you can do is you can use feature flags. With feature flags, developers gain the power to manipulate apps in production. Feature flag is basically a configuration in your code that executes based on the value of the feature flag. Let's say your team is working on a new login page. Everything is done, implementation is done, QA team is tested it, so you can release to production, but the team is feeling that this is a bit too big change. So to minimize the impact of a faulty release, why not move everything behind a feature flag and release the new login page to the production behind the feature flag? If there is any problem with the new login page, let's say the new password field is not accepting specific characters anymore, you can turn off the feature flag and by that roll back the login page to the previous working version. So your users will not be affected by the bug anymore, and there was no need to do any code change for this. There is no need for the team to figure out what is the problem. They don't need to fix it, testers to test it, and release to production. You will have time to do that because you turned off the feature which caused the problem, and the users can use the old version of the feature. Okay, so far we talked about two problems. The first one was the slow adoption. As a solution, yes, users can start creating hotfixes when there is a bug in production and they want to make sure that the users are receiving the fix as soon as possible, and mobile developers can even force users to update their application, but probably that's not the best idea. Instead, I think it's a better idea to focus on the quality of the release and apply the shift left methodology. So make sure you are testing early, have a way to detect issues, and using stage releases. The next problem was the lack of option to rollback. For that, mobile teams can use feature flags and release risky features and big code changes behind the feature flag, and by feature flags, developers will have the power to manipulate an app in production and, if needed, roll back a specific feature. Okay, before we continue and talk about LaunchDarkly's first integration with Bitrise, I would be interested, how do you deal with the risk of faulty releases? So we have this pool, and I would be interested how your team is dealing with these problems. This pool is a multi-answer pool, so you can select multiple ones. Okay, let's continue and talk about LaunchDarkly first integration with Bitrise. The problem we wanted to solve is the lack of transparency of app and feature releases, often causing miscommunication between teams and stakeholders, which generates a lot of work for release owners. At Bitrise, we know that managing mobile apps can be overwhelming and difficult to understand, especially for non-technical team members and stakeholders. And this can generate a lot of work for release owners, as the release owners are the one who are responsible to update everybody. Release owners tend to spend most of their time updating their stakeholders through Slack or Teams or any other channels anytime there is a change in the release process. To help streamline app releases, at Bitrise we introduced Release Management in 2023, making it possible to manage and overview App Store and Google Play releases in one centralized place. Thanks to the partnership between LaunchDarkly and Bitrise, mobile teams can now follow feature flags next to their store releases in Release Management as well. So now, next to managing beta distribution, automatic status updates for stakeholders, and production rollout, Release Management now includes an overview of feature flags of the application. For release owners responsible of supervising release status and the health of the release, this integration can simplify their work by offering a centralized view of the release status and the associated feature flags. For non-technical team members and stakeholders, This integration provides a user-friendly interface to understand the entire release process, reducing their dependency on the status updates of release owners. Okay, so let's see how can you achieve this. There are only 2 steps you need to do before you can see your feature flags in your app releases. First, you need to connect your LaunchDarkly account to your Bitrise account through SSO. After that, the authorization is done, you will need to select the LaunchDarkly project and the environment for your app on Bitrise. And that's it. After this point, your app releases in Release Management will contain the flags related to your apps. So by this integration, you can enable all team members and stakeholders to easily understand and overview the whole release process. And you can free up some time for the release owners and prevent miscommunication between teams and their stakeholders. The first integration is already available for LaunchDarkly and Bitrise users, and we expect to have more integrations with LaunchDarkly in the future. With this first integration, our goal was to make the app and feature releases a bit more transparent and hopefully a bit more convenient for the whole team. This was all for today. Thank you for your attention. But before you go, let us know if you would like to continue with this conversation with Bitrise by answering the next poll. Thank you again, and have a nice day.